I wandered through this life like someone walking in circles, without a clear direction, without a defined destination. Days followed one after the other, indistinguishable, as if time had lost its meaning. The years passed before my eyes like pages of an old book, yellowed with age, but unlike the epic tales I once dreamed of living, there were no heroes or grand conquests in my story, only routine, monotonous and relentless, enveloping me like a dense fog. I was already in my 30s, and the success, the one promised to us since youth, slipped through my fingers like sand. Every choice I made seemed to lead me to a dead end, where hope became a distant memory. There was no brilliant career, no accumulated fortune, just jobs that paid the bills but didn't feed the soul. My days were filled with tasks that, in the end, seemed empty of meaning. The empty house I lived in echoed the absence of a family, of a companion to share the days and warm the nights. The walls seemed to whisper the solitude I tried to ignore, but it was always there, surrounding me. Friends, who were once many, now followed their own paths, while I remained stuck on the same road. And relationships, which once brought hope of love and companionship, had become shadows of unfulfilled promises. The mirror reflected the shadow of what I once dreamed of being, a reflection distorted by accumulated frustrations. Every morning, the struggle to find a reason to keep going felt more arduous. I wondered where the dreams had gone that were once so vivid, so full of color and life. Now, they were just faded memories, almost erased by the gray routine and the weight of unfulfilled expectations. I believed the opportunities had passed, that the best of life had already happened for others, and that I would remain there, trapped in an existence of regrets and what-ifs. Life had become a constant tide of disillusionment, and the idea of change seemed as distant as the stars in the sky. I was lost, wandering in circles, not knowing how to escape the labyrinth that life had become. But on one of those days of inertia, something inside me began to stir. It was subtle, like a gentle breeze before a storm, yet impossible to ignore. It was a small spark, almost imperceptible, but it was there, shining amidst the darkness I had allowed to grow around me. I didn't know where it came from, but I felt a new strength, an energy that seemed to have been dormant for a long time. It was as if the universe, tired of seeing me resigned, whispered in my ear, "Wake up." And in that moment, I realized that life hadn't abandoned me. I had given up on it, letting my fears and frustrations guide my steps instead of walking on my own feet. The spark that ignited within me was small, but enough to illuminate a path I hadn't seen before. It was like opening my eyes for the first time after a long sleep, and what I saw both frightened and inspired me. I realized that, for a long time, I had been my own jailer. The chains that bound me were forged by limiting beliefs, those internal voices that told me I wasn't capable, that time had passed, that the world wasn't for me. They were the same voices that tirelessly repeated that it was too late, that the choices had already been made, that life was what it was, and nothing could be done to change it. But I began to question those voices. What if they were wrong? What if what I believed to be impossible was merely an illusion, a barrier I had created myself? Every limiting thought was a chain I needed to break, every doubt, a barrier to be torn down. I knew it wouldn't be easy, that it would require courage and a strength I wasn't yet sure I possessed. But for the first time in a long while, I felt it was worth trying. The change started within me, like a subtle movement that gradually gained strength. I began to look at life with new eyes, seeking out the small opportunities that had previously gone unnoticed. It was a slow, painful process, almost like learning to walk again. I had to unlearn the fears that paralyzed me, challenge the old patterns that kept me trapped in a past that no longer existed. Slowly, the spark of change began to grow, illuminating parts of me I had forgotten. I started to realize that it wasn't too late, that there was still time to rewrite my story, that the past, with all its failures and pains, was just a chapter, not the entire book. I decided that even if the odds were slim, I would believe again, believe that I was worthy of a second chance, of a full and happy life. And it was then that life, generous as only it can be, began to respond, as if it had been waiting for that very moment, to show me that the impossible was, in fact, a door waiting to be opened. When I finally decided to believe that change was possible, I felt as if the weight of the world was slowly lifting from my shoulders. It was as if, by taking that first step into the unknown, the invisible chains that had bound me to the past began to break, one by one. I understood that it wasn't too late, that there was still time to rewrite my story. The past, with all its failures and pains, was just a chapter, not the entire book. With this new perspective, I began to see life differently. I decided that, even if fear was present, it would no longer dictate my choices. I decided it was time to free myself from the shackles I had created and allow life to surprise me. And, surprisingly, it began to do just that. The doors that once seemed closed started to open, one by one, as if they had been waiting only for my consent. I realized that opportunities weren't as scarce as I had imagined, but that I needed to be willing to see them, to seize them with all the strength I possessed. Some of these opportunities came from the most unexpected places, others from places I had neglected for so long. I threw myself into them with renewed courage, unafraid of making mistakes, unafraid of failure. With every new attempt, every step I took toward what I truly desired, I felt a part of me come alive again. It was like rediscovering the joy of living, the delight in experiencing, in learning from mistakes, and growing through them. I allowed myself to dream again, and more importantly, I allowed myself to achieve. The successes began to appear, small at first, but each one was a victory I celebrated with gratitude. I learned to appreciate these small wins, to recognize them as signs that I was on the right path. The confidence that I had once lacked was being built, brick by brick, fueled by persistence and the courage to keep moving forward. And so, one day at a time, my life began to take on new meaning. What once was empty and gray now filled with color and possibilities. I saw that change wasn't magical, it didn't happen overnight, but it was real and tangible. With each chain broken, each limiting belief left behind, I felt freer, more alive, more connected to what truly mattered. And it was on this journey of self-discovery, of breaking the chains that held me back, that I finally began to live the life I had always desired. A life I chose to build, with all the courage and all the heart I could muster. Today, when I look back, I see that every step, every stumble, and every pain was essential in bringing me to where I am now. The greatest success is not in meeting the standards that society imposes, but in having the courage to break free from the invisible chains we create for ourselves. The turning point I had long awaited wasn't an external event, but an internal change, an awakening that transformed the way I saw the world and, most importantly, myself. I chose not to be a prisoner of fear and doubt any longer. I decided that I would no longer live in the shadow of unmet expectations, but in the light of the possibilities I could create for myself. And with that decision, I began to build a new reality, one I chose to live in with all my heart. The journey was long and full of challenges, but it was also rich in discoveries. I discovered that true strength is not in avoiding falls, but in getting up every time. That true love is not just about finding someone to share life with, but in learning to love oneself, to embrace one's imperfections, and to honor one's own story. By freeing myself from limiting beliefs, I found the freedom to be who I truly am, without masks, without fear of others' judgment. I realized that time is not an unyielding enemy, but a valuable ally that teaches and transforms us, as long as we are open to learning. Each day became a new opportunity to grow, to reinvent myself, to discover new dreams, and to find joy in the small things. Today, I live with purpose, guided by the certainty that I can choose how to respond to life's circumstances. The uncertainties that once paralyzed me are now accepted as a natural part of the journey. I embraced uncertainty with curiosity, seeing it not as a threat, but as a promise of new possibilities. And finally, I learned that what truly matters is this journey of self-discovery, this rebirth that is only possible when we leave behind the shadows of who we thought we were and embrace the light of who we can become. Life is not a final destination, but a series of moments, each offering the chance to be lived fully. And so, I move forward, no longer walking in circles, but treading a path I chose, with courage, gratitude, and a deep sense of peace.